Hey everyone, Seth at Hub City Vintage, and today I thought we'd take a look at a turning point in Seiko history by diving about 150 meters into their 4th generation pro diver, the 7002. For good or bad, and there are arguments with merit on both sides, 1988 would mark the end of what began as the all-Suwa built 6309 Turtle and Slim Turtle references. I say began, as in the early 80s, Seiko moved at least part of production of the 6309 Turtle Diver to markets outside of Japan, Hong Kong and Malaysia to be exact. It's important to mention the Turtle and Suwa division history for this story because the Daini built 7002 was an abrupt step in a completely different direction that closed the door on what is still likely the top-selling Seiko diver to date. Why exactly this was the best move for Seiko was never confirmed, but it likely had quite a bit to do with the cost involved to build the 6309 versus the 7002. The 6309 utilized mostly machined parts and more of them than the stamped and more streamlined build of the 7002. But Seiko did as Seiko does and gave customers a very well built and very reliable 150 meter diver that exceeded ISO standards before they were standard. Architecturally, Seiko moved away from the C-case design of the Turtle with the introduction of the first quartz core diver, the 7548, and subsequent mechanical counterpart, the 6309-7290, or what's referred to as the Slim Turtle. This newer style with large crown guards, tapered lugs, and beveled edges was here to stay and remained mostly unchanged through the evolutions of the 7002 as it began to transition into and ultimately give way to the iconic 7S26 SKX divers in 1996 until their recent retirement in 2019. For several years, the 7002 felt a bit like a placeholder to me, a watch to fill the gap between the 6309 Turtles and the SKX. It was a playground for early modders, and many of the examples that were available were covered in aftermarket parts. In the last couple of years, though, a newfound appreciation for this bare-bones tool diver has developed, and that's certainly reflected in a sharp increase in value and difficulty in finding unmolested, all-original examples. A quick scan through eBay proves that most of what's available are custom or modified builds that bear little resemblance to the original, and in some of which not a single genuine Seiko part can be found. To each his own, but personally, I prefer the genuine article with no more than a good cleaning and a service and a fresh crystal installed. It's no secret that the 6309 Turtle is just about my favorite vintage Seiko, and I'll just say it. A perfect watch from top to bottom. But I also love the 7002, and for the same reasons that I like the Turtle. Add to that it's the foundation on which the SKX house was built, and if you're not careful, you'll talk yourself right into getting one of your very own. And I just love this matte black dial. It's got a very subtle texture to it, so it's a great tool watch look anyway. And of course, because of oxidation, I've seen these styles develop a sort of a gray patina, and it really just depends on to what type and how much exposure you'll have over time. UV has a lot to do with it, but I've seen them anywhere from a nice solid black to very gray color dial, and they all look great. It's just such a nice monochromatic layout anyway. And part of that monochromatic layout has to do with the fact that the hour markers don't have that bright white contrast like you see on the 6309. It is a silver frame, sort of metallic silver frame around the hour markers, and if you're kind of far away, you don't even really notice it, but it is there, a hard frame of silver. And the markers themselves have an almost silvery appearance. The luminous material has a silvery appearance, and I've seen it be a silver green, sometimes greener, sometimes grayer. Really, again, just depends on how that patina develops. And it's not a color that you see with a lot of other patina development in luminous, and that's because the material that they used on most of the 7002s is promethium. And it's a very rare element. I think the reason probably that you don't see it on a lot of watches is that there's only about 500 to 600 grams of promethium available in the Earth's crust at any given time. And it's also, it's relatively safe, especially compared to other radioactive elements like radium or tritium. It's after a few years, it's got a very short half-life. So after a few years, it's really not dangerous to be this close to it. I'm not really worried at all. But unfortunately, because of that short half-life, you also don't get a lasting glow, luminous, properties from it. It's very strong for the first few years and then pretty much goes out altogether. But again, you do get the benefit of having this really nice patina that you see here. Now the hands are, of course, reminiscent. They were carried over. The large arrow minute hand and broad hour hand with these large luminous windows, and the standard lollipop design that was on the 6309, where when you get over to SKX, they reversed that. You get a black and white lollipop with the big pip on the tail. Now this is a date-only caliber, and some people might complain about that, but honestly, I wouldn't be bothered if there weren't even a date there. I like just a nice clean dial, and I think you get a balance here that you probably wouldn't have otherwise. We've got this large rectangular marker at 9 and 6, and because this is only a date here with this small luminous pip at 3, it's almost the exact same size and shape as the 9 o'clock marker. So just tremendous balance throughout, other than the Seiko and automatic silver printing below the 12. All else you'll really see here is the water 150 meters resist. Now I will say, whatever paint they used in this red for the water resist really tends to hold that color. They look red a long time after they were produced. I have seen them fade into some orange color, sometimes even a yellowish if there was a lot of UV exposure, but most of the time you'll see that they have remained red. And there is this dial, the 150 meter dial. This is going to be pretty much the most common one that you'll see. But there was also late 94 and 95, a transitional model. As they were moving closer to the SKX, that was a 200 meter designation. They made some changes to the case. In fact, it even has a smaller crystal, a 31.5 millimeter crystal, whereas this one is the same 32 millimeter crystal that you will see on the turtle. And that smaller crystal and a couple of other changes that they made into how it's set, the gasketing, it gave it a bit of a higher 50 more meters water resistance. They felt comfortable that they could call it 200 meters and it wasn't going to be a problem. And of course the SKX for its entirety was a 200 meter resist watch. But there is that dial that was available for a short period of time. And there's also this dial, but with 17 joules underneath the water 150 meters resist. And that is on the JDM version of this watch, reference 7002 7000J. And I've even seen some 7001s that also have that 17 joule, but those could also be JDM references on occasion to a 1 at the end of the second 4 digits. So, and really those are pretty, they're hard to find. That's a pretty rare watch and one that a lot of people would like to have in their collection. Also, something about the 7002. Now, I think the 6309 was the same way, the slim version of it. The original turtle was only a black bezel, but the 7002 here you could have in either this black count-up bezel, a standard insert count-up style here. But there was also a Pepsi red and blue bezel, which I love that watch as well. I think it looks fantastic, beautiful watch. Either bezel, black is gonna go well with this dial. It's nice continuity, but the Pepsi is a standout as well. And let's see, there was also one other 7002 model I wanted to make sure and mention because it was also in that transitional period, late 94, 95, is the 7002 7020, and I mention it because it is also a 200 meter watch, so still in that pro diver category. And it's the 7002 7020, and it's a kind of it's much different than this one. It has some a much different styling. The bezel is stainless steel with a black inlay, and it's got some knurling around the outside. And the markers are much different than they're framed in polished frames. Lots of curvature there. It's a really neat watch. I'll put a picture of one up so you can see. how it looks. And that was one that was also carried over into the subsequent 7S26 line. That was a 7S26 model as well that's nearly identical. But I think that, you know, there's really very little to complain about with this watch. It is a beautiful, bare bones tool watch, and everything that you like about a diverse watch, this one has it. And of course the movement, this Daini 7002, you know, this would be the base movement. These 7,000 movements have carried Seiko right into today. You can look at any of the 7S series movements, even the 4Rs, 6s. I mean, they all, you turn those watches over, look through some of those exhibition case backs, and you're going to see, you know, some very recognizable aspects from this movement to those. They are still the DNA has, it is just lasted and something that they've stuck to, just continued to improve upon. But there is definitely recognizable shapes and lines there that you will see, even if you know nothing about working on watches. Just take a look and you'll see that there's quite a bit of familiarity there. And that's because they are great movements and they last forever. And I doubt you'll get much argument out of anybody who is a Seiko fan that these 7,000 series movements, they are a breeze to work on. They go back together quite easily. They really last. And you know what they might lack in styling, they certainly make up for in robustness and reliability. This watch will run for years to come. But let's get this one back in the case and take a look at how we finished up. Maybe even get a strap going forward, and then I think we'll wrap this one up. All finished up and back in the case. This really is just a great example of Seiko's 7002, 7009 4th generation diver. This one specifically comes to us from July of 1991, so an earlier example, but a beautiful one. There's just a few marks and nicks here in the insert of the bezel, but I think a great tool watch should bear a few of the scars of its years. Just proves that it was worn and loved, and that does nothing to take away from just how great this watch looks. At 42 millimeters, it is got a lot of presence on the wrist and not going to get lost no matter your strap choice. This is a great looking watch. I hope you've enjoyed learning a bit about it and its place in Seiko history, its importance. And if you have, consider liking and subscribing. You can also join us over at Patreon, where $7 a month gets you access to exclusive content. You get sneak peeks at all of our upcoming inventory. That alone makes it worth joining the club. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.